In this video we're going to model the trusses that sit on top of this girder and span from the south walls of the model to the north walls. Let's use the tape measure tool to quickly examine what the parameters of those trusses are going to be. So from the base of the model, they're going to be at elevation 16.5 feet. They appear to be 4'6" in height, 12 inches, 1 foot wide, and the distance from each other appears to be 5 feet. You can see each subsequent truss is additionally 5 feet apart, so we can safely say those are at 5-foot centers. Remembering that information, I'm going to start by drawing the outline of a truss in plan. I'm going to draw a rectangle and then pull it into place where it belongs. So there's a rectangle that's 1 foot in width. I'm going to edit that rectangle by selecting its top edge, moving it to the inside face of wall using the move tool. Constrain it to the y-axis. Select again the bottom edge of the rectangle, move tool. To the inside. Face of the south wall. There. So now we have the profile of the first of the trusses. Let's change to isometric view. Select the face of the truss and pull it to its proper height, which is 4.5 feet, so 4'6". And there we have the correct size truss for that first instance of it. If we haven't, no, we haven't yet. Let's create the layer called trusses. We don't need it quite yet, but it's good to create it in advance. This is an instance where it's useful to create a component in SketchUp, which is whenever you're creating an element which is repeated, instances of which are repeated on a regular basis, a good idea to create a component, and furthermore create a dynamic component, because in this case we could modify the properties of it according to the different locations where it needs to exist. So I'm going to go and say edit, make component, or simply type the letter G. Let's call this truss dynamic. And we'll later see what's involved in that. Go create. Alright, it's on layer 0, but we can change that now. Entity info. Let's put it on the truss layer. Okay, so we have a component called truss, the instance of which is correct for the truss in that location. I'm going to go to Window, Component Attributes, and we're going to add attributes to this dynamic truss. And one of the attributes that we're going to add is its Z position, because the Z position, which is now 0, so it's just now sitting on the floor, needs to be 16.6. We measured that as the distance to the underside of the truss. So that's 198 inches, right? That is not going to change. But we're going to add an attribute which is going to be useful as well, is the length along the y-axis. Right now it's 398 inches, but as you'll see shortly, we'll need that to change depending on its location. So let's go to, so we have this dynamic component called truss dynamic. Let's go to a plan view, and clearly we're going to need copies of it. So I am going to use the move tool and move copies, holding the control key in the red axis or the x-axis direction. 5 feet, enter, and let's say 16x, 16 times. That appears to be 1 too many times. Let's change that to 15x. Okay, that's the right number of trusses, but clearly some of them fit, others do not. Let's take, for example, the instance of the first truss that doesn't fit, and obviously we're going to have to change its length. Now we conveniently added that attribute, so let's use a tape measure tool to measure the span. Truss has to span 45 feet 2 inches. So let's first select the component selected. Let's change its length to exactly that. 45 feet 2. Enter. 542 inches. So let's, it's a little out of bounds now, so we're going to use the move tool to move the endpoint of the component to the inside face of the wall here. Try that again. I moved a copy on accident. Constrain it to the north-south axis. There it is. Okay, so now we have the right length truss for that middle span. So now all we have to do is select the instances of the truss there. We don't need the AutoCAD selected, so we're going to deselect that. Even though it's locked, it wouldn't have deleted, and delete those instances. And then now we're going to move copies of that truss in this direction. 5 feet, enter. Whoops. Let's do that again. Copies. feet, enter, and 6x. Enter, 6x, no, 7x, 8x will do it. So now we have the correct number for the middle span. Now we need to modify the instance of the component here. Let's measure the distance it has to span using a tape measure tool. It needs to span 32.2. Select the component, change its length. To 32 feet 2 inches, 386 inches. Let's move it in place where it belongs. And remove these last 3 instances of the truss whose length was not appropriate for that span and just create 3 more copies of this. So we're going to select that, move copy, feet, 4x, or 3x. Now we have the right number, so we have a dynamic component, 3 different lengths. They're all at the same elevation. If we go to the isometric view, we can see they're all at the right height. And I'm going to orbit around and start turning layers on one at a time. You can see the girder. Well, the girder happened to be on layer 1. We're going to change that so that girder is underneath it where it belongs. If we turn on the column layer, you see those are where they belong, and the floors, patios, walls, the face setting is set to X-ray so you can see what's in the model there. And I think we're